Welcome into another hashtag for the kids covering youth soccer in the Southeast. I'm Jason Longshore, joined today by Alan Ewing of ATL Futsal and actually a number of different futsal organizations. We'll get to how that's evolved in a minute. Alan, thanks for the time.
My pleasure, Jason.
Let's start with people who don't know you. What's your journey been like coming to the United States and coming specifically to the Atlanta area and getting involved in coaching here?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to seeing my brother come across to the US in '96 and telling me about all the things he got to do. So at first it was very shallow reasons. It was, being able to go to New York City, see the skyline, go water skiing. I mean, it's crazy how everyone tends to take that for granted. But in England, the weather's not the greatest. Dreaming of going to America was a big thing for a lot of people. And he came out to coach. So I decided that's what I'd like to do. I enrolled on the FA preliminary coaching badge in April 1996. I went ahead and did that course, passed it, and then in 1998 came out to New Jersey with UK Elite and had a fantastic 10 weeks coaching. And I realized that you could have a full-time soccer coaching career over here without having played pro back in England, which is something you don't get the opportunity to do so.
Right.
And so I met an English coach who was a director of coaching at a club up in New Jersey, and being incredibly naive, I didn't know what a director of coaching was, so I asked a few questions. He told me basically that he had his UEFA B coaching license and a sports science degree, and that allowed the club to sponsor his visa, which was a H1B. So I went back to England, quit my job, went back to college, did my UEFA B, and then came out every summer, pretty much. And then in 2003, I ended up directing a camp in Noonan, and the director of coaching asked me to come back and work with some teams. So I did, and then I met a girl. My visa expired, went home, came back out on a new visa, and then within about a year, I'd taken a few more coaching licenses and then became director of coaching for the Cannon Soccer Club, which is now part of Southern Soccer Academy. And that's where it started. So got into club soccer and, really enjoyed the Atlanta area. And then got into schools a little bit, kind of fell out of love with the game because it became more administration, entered teaching. Then after school and sports programming, I did a little bit of work with Soccer in the Streets when we were doing some work with Baumschule, which was a program from the University of Heidelberg in Germany with Steve Hutton.
Right.
And then quit full-time soccer to go into teaching, and then ended up with Concord Football, working with Brian in Fayetteville, which was a fantastic 4 years because I didn't have to worry about administration. I was just focusing, and then got out. And then got back in again because of working with Simon Davey at SSA. My company sponsored his visa to bring him over, and Callum O'Hanlon. And so we worked together for a few years, ended up being the director of coaching education for Southern Soccer Academy, and was trying to start some initiatives, one of them being futsal, and it didn't really take on at the club level. So I decided that the best way to do this was to kind of step back and approach it from a completely different angle, which was, okay, what can I do for my son? My son Callum is now is about to be 12, and I didn't want to go down the traditional academy club route of driving all over going to lots of tournaments, because I didn't want to burn my wife out, let alone my child out. And what started with 13, 14 players has grown over the last few years to be now offering programs in North Atlanta, South Atlanta, Macon, and then Birmingham and Knoxville, as I thought we could try and form a network of clubs that would provide futsal opportunities.
That's what's so cool to me is futsal is something that I didn't grow up with. You know, when I was a kid, we had the soccer academy and soccer center in Fayetteville and the traditional Americanized indoor soccer game. When I found futsal, it made so much sense to me. And watching players who had grown up in a futsal environment, you know, versus players who hadn't grown up in it, you can see some differences. What was it for you when futsal became the light bulb above your head and it's like, this is where I want to go?
I mean, I never had any exposure to futsal when I was younger. I remember Brian Moore doing some over at the Kedron Fieldhouse with Peachtree City Lasers. And that kind of, like, I got a bit interested in it then. But basically in the end of 2016, when I was coaching my son's team, so many practices were always cancelled because of the rain, fields being closed. And I started to look at some gyms. I started to look at some futsal programs, and I came to find there really wasn't any. I looked at US futsal first, and their website said that there was some programs in Marietta, but when I clicked on the links, all the links were dead. Mm-hmm. I spoke with USA Futsal, which is now called United Futsal, I believe. And their model didn't really fit ours. They were more of a tournament model. And then I spoke with USU Futsal, and I was really encouraged about how they were focused on helping programs grow. I mean, their starter, the affiliation fee was incredibly small. It was less than $200. And they gave you all this marketing support and guidance on what you should be paying for rentals. And there was really nothing in our area, so we just, you know, you can always see the links of the South American players. I read the book Talent Code, which goes into a big chapter on Brazil and futsal and how it, you know, repetitive actions reinforce building myelin around the nerve, which means you can send signals faster. And then when I did a look at all the world players of the year, it was amazing to me how many of them had grown up in this type of environment. Obviously, Ronaldo and Messi have dominated the last, 10, 12 years. But even before then, Ronaldinho, Kaká, a lot of the Brazilian players, even Zinedine Zidane, Xavi, a lot of these guys talk about how good futsal is, the tight spaces, and the touches. I mean, you get nearly, I think it's 5 to 6 times as many touches in a game, which means how many more decisions are you going to be making?
Right.
And that's the thing for me. Your best teacher is your last mistake, I think is a great quote, because you can look back, figure out what could I do differently. And if you're making more mistakes, you can learn faster, as well as your successes as well. But it's just the game is so much more interesting. If you're watching a soccer game and you're 5-0 down, you're not really going to come back from that. But futsal is completely different. The momentum shifts so much quicker. You lose the ball 4 seconds later in the back of your net. So the players are held more accountable. And then from a coaching aspect, the best thing I like about it is it's too fast for the coaches to joystick coach. You can't tell the player what to do because the ball's gone.
Right.
So it's more about giving them the options. In training, it's more like basketball than it is soccer. And then just sitting back and observing and just watching them make decisions. And that's the best thing for me is, we've been in games at regionals last year. We were 7-3 down with 4 minutes to go, and we won 8-7. And my goalkeeper scored 2 goals. And that was just, obviously I don't think it was as entertaining for the other club. But for me, I came off thinking, what just happened? And the parents were stunned, and it was just an amazing experience. So the game of futsal is just so fast, so entertaining, and I think it can really grab American parents, families, and I really wish we could get a professional futsal league started in this country.
You mentioned the parents, and that's what I was going to ask. What has the reception been from parents who have either maybe not had much of a soccer background, maybe their kids are new to the game as a whole, or parents whose kids have played in the traditional youth clubs and are looking for that alternative?
It's been varied, really. I mean, when we started off, it was kind of like the traditional soccer club mentality where parents tend to follow a coach. So we just started doing indoor practices, and then when the fields were closed, we just invited other people to come in. And we started doing drop-ins, and that's when parents started to kind of spread the word for us. And they just said it was so much fun. Now, we've had some parents that have been with us for 3.5 years that still really don't know the rules. And that's okay, because it's a complicated game. We've struggled with referees, but the parents have done a really good job of embracing it, and they see the benefits of it when they go back to soccer. The players just tend to have a better awareness, their touch on the ball. They tend to be using the sole of their foot a lot more. And I mean, a lot of the thing is not just the game. I think one of the big parts is our approach has been very different. We focus on behaviour first. And there's a great coach called Mark Bennett from PDS Coaching who I've attended a few of his clinics, and one of his big quotes is, behaviour is a performance. And so with the environment that futsal creates, the moment you stop working, the moment you start behaving like a champion, you're going to be exposed. And we focus a lot on the interactions between the players, and we don't let them get away with talking in a negative tone. We try and teach them how to communicate. And I think that's what the parents love the most, is when a new player walks into our program, I do not go and greet them. It's the players that go and greet them. And they have permission to come over and stop the session, stop the activity, and introduce them to all of the players, and then get them involved. So it's been a long journey. Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you hope. You give players a bit more power, and that sometimes they use it. But for the most part, if we're guiding them and we're controlling how we speak and trying to be an example, then the parents have just bought into that. And that's been a big factor for us.
I think for a lot of people, they look at indoor or futsal, kind of how it's, I guess, always been here as a winter thing, as an off-season thing. But what you're doing is taking it to where it is the club environment. It is a different environment. It's a different way for players to develop. How has that been to kind of build that here in the Southeast? Like you mentioned, there really wasn't anybody else doing it, so you've created a league, a tournament, a competitive structure from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with a lot of clubs. To be fair, a lot of clubs have come to us in the winter and asked about leagues. I mean, MOBA has been a big supporter of us down here on the south side. Some of the clubs run their own futsal programs, so they tend to kind of just stay within their own framework, which is totally fine. But the main reason we started the league was because we wanted some other people for our kids to play against. It gets pretty boring when you're playing within the same squad of 16 players.
Right.
And so we just decided that we had a partnership with the local school in Noonan, the Heritage School. And when they were putting in a new basketball court, they agreed to put down some futsal lines for us. We helped them start an intramural program, which then enabled a lot of their parents and players to want to play in our league. And at the first year, it was just a safe side. It was AFC Lightning, MOBA, some SSA teams, and then our own teams. But it was daunting, and one of my biggest weaknesses is admin, scheduling. I absolutely detest it because I'm not very good at it. But the clubs have been very cooperative when gyms have changed because of basketball games, and we've gone in and we've ran some pre-sessions for them as well, because we don't want them to not get involved because they don't know what it's about. And our big thing is, if we can let us run a session, your kids are going to love it. That is it. And when you come and play the game, you're going to see how much fun it is. So it was a challenge, but we've had a lot of coaches and that supported us, and now it's growing big on the north side. It's just, for me, it's been very organic. A lot of parents have gone out and done the work for us. As much as I would like to think that our Instagram and Facebook marketing is on point, it's word of mouth. And we've got some parents that are just raving fans, and they're going out and doing a lot of recruiting for us. The biggest challenge is... I'm sorry, Jason.
Go ahead.
The biggest challenge for us is, for some areas, is letting the clubs know we're not in competition with them. We only practice once a week during soccer season, and then we pick it up in the off season. And we're very, very flexible. We do realise that clubs do go out of town for tournaments, and if kids are going to miss our practices, then as long as we have open lines of communication, then we're totally okay with that. So I think now we're starting to, a lot of directors and a lot of coaches are starting to see that we're not trying to compete with them, we're trying to complement them. And we want to collaborate with them. And I think that's the key thing. In order for us to really grow this game, all the different programs have to collaborate. And recently in Atlanta, there was 2 other programs that have started, Southern America Futsal and then Yellow Caps, which, I don't think would have even thought about going to the USU Futsal Regionals 2 years ago. So the fact that there are more programs starting to do futsal year round or include it with their soccer practices is very encouraging.
What are the things you notice when you see a player who has that futsal mentality, that futsal experience, compared to a player who doesn't? How do they stand out?
Well, on the soccer field, you can clearly see it just seems like they have so much more time. They put their foot on top of the ball a lot more. They'll be dragging the ball with the sole of their feet. And it was interesting when I go to watch, Atlanta United play, and you see the South American players, and in tight spaces, they'll have their foot on top of the ball and they'll shield the ball. They won't just panic. And I've seen that with my own son. My son is pretty big for his age. He can strike a ball really well. And before futsal, he was just using those athletic abilities. Now, under pressure with people that are much faster than him, he'll hold the ball and shield and just wait. And he gets his head up and he'll look. He'll look for combinations, and players who are quick over the first 3 or 4 yards can really excel in futsal, as well as the players that aren't, because it does allow you to get your foot on top of the ball and make more mistakes, and so you learn faster. So it's pretty easy to see when they step into the futsal court whether they've played or not. That's easy to see on the other side. If they start playing futsal and everything is the inside of their foot, then you know that they haven't really played much futsal, because the emphasis on futsal is the sole.
Right.
But you can clearly see it on the soccer field. People that put their foot on top of the ball, they're calm, they're composed, and they just seem to have a little bit more time than everybody else.
Something that people are listening and are probably a little surprised that you've mentioned multiple times is not just the sole of the foot, not just the technique, but decision-making, and how futsal affects decision-making on a futsal court and on a soccer field. What is it about the game that improves a player's decision-making?
Well, you just have a lot less time, a lot less space. You're under a lot more pressure. So you have to get your head up a lot earlier. You have to be more aware of your surroundings. There are going to be people running in behind you. You lose the ball 1 second later, it's been played in behind. So you're always having to check your body position, scan both shoulders to make sure you can make the best decision. And of course, you make mistakes. So you're forced to learn. And as a coach, if you see the players making the same mistakes, then it's the best thing about futsal is it's roll on, roll off subs. So you just bring them out, you have a chat with them, talk about it, and then send them back in, and they can be faced with that in the same scenario pretty much 6, 7, 8 times every time they're out on that court, whether it is a decision to dribble, to pass, or to turn and drop it back to the goalkeeper, and then look to play out. So it's been really interesting watching the players come up with solutions themselves as opposed to just giving them the answers. And I think that's what we need in this country if we're going to challenge at the international level, is we do need more creative players. And we can't really create the environment. We can create a climate for it, but futsal already does it. Because you are scooping the ball, you are flicking the ball, you are dragging the ball across the body using quick footwork. There are runners going both ways, and you just have to be more aware. And I think if we could include that with all clubs, even have futsal leagues going year-round, outside, on outdoor courts, old tennis courts that aren't being used, I just think we'd have a tremendous growth in the enjoyment of the sport, but also in the amount of players that we can give the opportunity to be creative.
What's been interesting for me in my limited experience with futsal, we tried to use it where we could with soccer in the streets, and whether it was older kids who had really no soccer background, putting them on a basketball court and creating a futsal environment seemed to make a lot of sense to them. Like the movement off the ball, the strategy of the game, they picked it up, I think maybe a little quicker than they would have outside in a normal soccer environment. But we also saw just more opportunity to get programs started. And if you had 10 kids, if you had smaller numbers, you couldn't get a full outdoor team going. You could do things with futsal in places that, communities that maybe didn't have that soccer background. It's so multifaceted. I'm surprised that U.S. soccer hasn't embraced it more.
Yes, and especially if we are trying to produce multi-sport athletes, if we have thousands of basketball courts around the country, and for the most part, we don't even have to modify anything. The futsal area is a little bit smaller, but it's so interesting to see a lot of courts that are around. If we could, start using them, start just organising pickup. And the best thing about it is you don't need that many players. Obviously down here, you could play soccer year round, even though looking outside today in these conditions, I don't know if I want to. But in the summer, it's so hot. And with people traveling, you could have a team and you only need, 6-7 players. If you've got a couple of subs, you're good. And I think rather than playing outside in 95 degrees, summer leagues where a lot of school gyms are available, you could come inside and call off, but keep playing. And obviously US soccer did try and buy into it a little bit with the futsal period, with the DA program. Right. But it wasn't really reinforced. I do know that clubs down here do that. I know AFC Lightning, they have their DA players playing futsal right now, but there's no real league or tournament for them. Last year, though, and the year before, there was supposed to be a regional tournament, but US soccer has recently kind of taken a step back from futsal. And I don't know why.
Feels like a missed opportunity. Feels like a huge missed opportunity, and it's an opportunity for you. And I think you've started to fill that with not just the programs in the Atlanta area, but now spreading all over the Southeast. How has it been on your end, taking what you've done here and taking it to Macon and Birmingham and Knoxville?
Birmingham was a really easy transition. 2.5 years ago, I was on a coaching course in Peachtree City with Gary Kernine, who's an author of a book series called The Modern Soccer Coach. And he had brought in a gentleman called Tristan Tillett, who was a sports performance coach. So he came in and did a session on a warm-ups, and it was a lot of footwork, but it was people were moving. People weren't just running in lines. There was balls involved. A lot of the movement had a ball. It was all about changing the direction, but making sure that mentally they were switched on. And we stayed in touch, and he's got 3 kids. And so he'd always go to the Finley Centre in Birmingham, which is a wonderful facility. And he'd have his kids playing futsal. So I just reached out to him and just said, maybe we should start something there. So we ran a camp, and we had the grand total of about 19 kids on it. But it was a lot of fun. And he's worked with a lot of some of the 3v3 programs with Hoover Soccer Club, and last year the league just started and it just exploded. I mean, the league in Birmingham is bigger than the one in Atlanta. I think one of those reasons could be because no one else is doing it, and all the clubs there aren't trying to do it, and so Boosa's sending teams, Vestavia's sending teams, Hoover's sending teams, and then we have our academy. So USU Futsal launched an initiative called, it was kind of based on the DA program and how we can have academies that compete and meet up and play year round. It's just called the USU Futsal Academy program. And so they invited us in Atlanta to apply. So we did. One of the key things was you had to be independent from soccer clubs, so you couldn't kind of use it to recruit.
Right.
And so we were one of the first 16 that was approved. And then Birmingham joined last year. So that's really helped. And one of the coolest things I think we've done is last year we drove to Anniston and we took a couple of teams, and Birmingham brought a couple of teams over. So we met them halfway. We rented a private school gym and just played. And it was great. And we've done that since with clubs out of North Carolina. We met them in Spartanburg. And Knoxville they've just really caught the bit and are really going at it now. Macon, again, was a parent in Atlanta called his daughter's doctor in Macon, and they both the girls play soccer, and he asked, and Scott told Jeremiah, oh yeah, we're doing futsal. And so he called me. He came up to Noonan. His daughter Lily practiced with us, and then I said, just give me a call when you get home. And he called me, and it was nearly 10 o'clock at night. And I just said, there's no reason for you to be coming up here. If you get me a gym down there, and I'll come to you. And 2 days later, he had me a gym, and within 3 weeks, we'd sold out a program for the winter. And we did a 12-week program down there, and we're back where we were down there last night. So it seems to be the same model in every city. First of all, you have to educate people what futsal is. You show them what the game is. The kids love it. The parents buy in, and then you go from there. But in Macon, we've had a lot of support off FPD, First Presbyterian Day School. They've actually built us. Let me take that back. They didn't build it for us. They reconditioned some tennis courts into futsal courts. And Charlie tried to get futsal down there 10 years ago, and no one really kind of caught on to it. So he's been a big support of our programs. So a lot of it is about just getting local support. We run a lot of free sessions to kind of get interest. Our academy tryouts are a month long because soccer tryouts are flawed. You can't create a team in 3 days.
No.
And so we basically have an open window where players come in and practice with us for a month. And if they like it, great. Then we can add them to an academy team. And if they don't like it, then great, that's their choice. They also get the opportunity to assess us because in tryouts, we try and show them our coaching style, which is a bit different. It's more standoffish, call the players in, let them define success, then send them back out. How do you measure that? And then we also need to figure out if this is the right fit for us, because youth sports in this country are incredibly competitive, as I'm sure you are aware. Mm-hmm. And so, our big emphasis is on the training environment. Our big season is the winter. We do festivals throughout the year, but we're not going to try and compete with club soccer because we're going to lose every single time. And so we have come across a few parents that are very gung-ho, and we've just had to kind of say, I don't know if this is a program for you. Maybe we can't provide enough for you. And so it's just been a really interesting journey, especially this weekend when we went to regionals in Charlotte.
Yeah, what has that next step been like for you, where it's going from training to now competitive situations like regionals? It's
been a big shock. I was on a phone call yesterday with a group out in New Jersey that is building a big facility, and it's somebody I've known for a long while, and his background in futsal is very limited. And he called me a futsal expert, and I said, absolutely not. I am not a futsal expert. I often say, it sounds like a bad joke. Did you hear about the Englishman who started the South American sport in America? Because we've worked with local Brazilian coaches, Neto, who has Brazilian Futsal Academy based out of Lake Point. He's come down. He worked with us throughout the summer. We also have a Brazilian coach, Christiane Lessa, who has been working with Atlanta Soccer Club, and she's come in. And when it comes to futsal, it's been a real big learning curve. We're trying to convince our parents and players to call it by the Portuguese names, Fixo, Ala, Pivo. It's been a big learning curve for us. When we went to regionals, every team was playing the Y formation, and it was something that we really wanted to instill. But also in games, we'll come up against teams that have been doing futsal, or clubs like Barefoot Futsal in North Carolina. Guillermo's been doing futsal there for like 13 years, and he's from Colombia, and knows more about futsal, has more knowledge of futsal in his little finger than I do in my entire body. And so we're having to adjust. Are we going to play a high press? Are we going to play a 2-2? The ultimate goal for us is for the players to be able to recognise in moments of the game when to switch. Right. And that, watching the likes of Barefoot Futsal, and even Elite Futsal, Charleston, Kevin Jackson's doing a tremendous job there. The players will call out their defensive shape in the game. And that's just fascinating to me. That is where you really have now given the game to the players. And they can recognise and defend in a narrow 2-2, or switch to a Y, or press in a high Y. I haven't been this hungry to learn about a sport. Once I did my UEFA B, I've never really coached at that level, because it is aimed at the professional level. When I became a teacher, I had to learn a lot about baseball, basketball, but it was out of necessity. Now we have a real hunger, and our program director here, Poria Mortazavi, has done a tremendous job of bringing everybody together, bringing the coaches together, and working out, this is what we're going to try and focus on. And his level of communication has been first class. The North program has grown tremendously down to him. I live in Noonan. We have PE programs, after school programs. I'm trying to help Knoxville, Birmingham, and Poria has really done a tremendous job in Atlanta, bringing coaches in and building our program. So as much as I would like to take a lot of the credit, the growth in Atlanta, especially on the north side, is down to Poria.
What are the next steps? What's coming up next for Southern Futsal as a whole?
Well, Birmingham's league is going to wrap up this coming weekend. Knoxville is starting their spring training program. We're just lining up camps right now. So we do a foundation camp, so for people who are new to futsal or are even new to soccer. And then we do an advanced camp. We're doing those at Pace Academy up in Atlanta. I think it's in Buckhead. We're in Landmark Christian School in Fairburn. We're down at FPD in Macon. Birmingham has camps at the Finley Centre. So we're trying to get all our staff to kind of support each other this summer. So that's the planning stages. Right now in Atlanta, we have 2 weeks left of the league. And then soccer starts back. So we'll go back to one practice a week. We did have 2 teams that went to regionals that were finalists. Our 2008 girls and our 2009 girls were finalists, and they got invited to nationals in Kansas. But it's in February when soccer season is in, and we have our approach is we're not going to force people to go across the country. If the team wants to do it and everyone commits, then yes, we'll do it. But we're not going to turn around and say, yes, we have to go. Because, again, it's a big financial burden. We're trying to keep the fees down as much as we can. And if the parents are, if they're feeling that they're being forced a certain way or rushed into a decision and, last year we went to nationals. We took 2 teams to nationals. We had 3 that qualified, and it was a completely different level. We're dealing with St. Louis. We're dealing with teams at Boston that play 5 months of the year because it's so cold up there.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've got a head start on us. I mean, the reason I started it was I was looking around and I thought, well, someone's going to start it. It may as well be me. And I'm glad we did, because we've got 3 years under our belt now, and we're still light years behind. But the dream for me would be this. I hand this to Atlanta United, because they have the resources and they have the reach where they can combine with different community organisations and get it running. I did meet with Dean a few weeks ago about maybe doing this down the line. They would come in and take over, because they're going to be able to grow this faster than I can on my own and with the staff that we currently have. And I think we've had our success in partnering with organisations like schools and offering after-school programs for free. In return, they give us gym space. And I think working with bigger organisations is going to be key for us in the future to partner with, because futsal wasn't started out of Atlanta. Futsal was definitely not started out of a way to make money. My after school programs, my PE programs have supported futsal for the last 3 years, but growing this game is the only way that I think we can have a massive impact on the culture of soccer here. And one of the other exciting things we're doing is we're working with Tom Byer, who's the author of Soccer Starts at Home, to do some programs with 2, 3, 4-year-olds. And it's about teaching the parents about how to work with their child at home. Because when a 4 and 5-year-old walks out to the soccer field for the first time, which child has a parent that's played soccer or has worked with them. And I think that's critical for us. I say us. I'm still a British citizen. But my kids are American. My son has already said that if he had to choose between America and England, he'd pick the US. So my future is here, and we've got to. No culture has ever won the World Cup unless it's like a Brazil or an England or an Italy, which has soccer all the way down to the youngest age groups. But America is very different. We're competing with a completely different animal. So clubs and organisations, I think, really have to embrace the parent and get them involved, which sometimes is quite scary when you are getting the parents involved, because there is that kind of fear of we know soccer, they shouldn't get involved, but they know their kid better than anybody else. And the quicker we can break down that barrier between the parents and the clubs and educate them, then I think that the quicker we can create a soccer culture in this country, which is the number one goal, I think.
Yeah, I think if U.S. soccer is going to get to the level that a lot of us hope that it does, and U.S. soccer as just the whole soccer culture and idea in this country, I think futsal has a huge role to play. For people listening who might not have had a chance to play or experience it, how can they get in touch? How can they follow everything going on in Southern Futsal?
Yeah, so Atlanta, tlfutsal.com. That will take them to the Atlanta portal on the Southern Futsal website. Birmingham, BHM Futsal. And then Knoxville Futsal is just Knoxville Futsal. We are looking to partner with we're very close to opening up some programs in other cities in Tennessee and also in South Carolina. So any coaches that feel that they want to get involved with futsal, what we did in Knoxville was we sent them all the equipment, we sent them balls, we sent them goals, and just said get it started. We have the website, we have social media to support them, but we do pick up play down here on the south side in Atlanta every Friday for high school and adults, and the plan is facilities have been a big challenge. Right now we're based at Pickneyville Middle School in Peachtree Corners, up on the north side, and then Landmark Christian on the south side. So if they go to the website, they can contact Poirier or myself, info@atlfutsal.com will come to both of us. And that's the best way. And then Tristan in Birmingham, so southernfutsal.com will give them access to any of our locations.
Awesome. Alan, thanks so much for the time. I'm glad that futsal maybe's rekindled that love of the game for you.
Oh, absolutely it has, because I know nothing about it. And I'm just trying to read, and I've now just taken a step back into high school. So I've never actually coached high school soccer. So I've now just become a community coach for a local high school down here in Peachtree City. So that's going to be a big challenge for me.
Oh, that's outstanding. We're going to be doing some high school game of the weeks this year on the Soccer Down Here network. So maybe we'll run across you down there.
Yeah, keep an eye out for Trinity Christian School in Sharpsburg.
Will do for sure. Alan, thanks for the time.
My pleasure, Jason. Thank you.